You ready? Okay. Hey, Renitta, what's going on? You just finished session, and we saw a lot of information around certain bills, whether that's, of course, the hate crime legislation, and then, of course, House Bill 838. But what else happened during the legislative session that we need to know about, and then we'll break apart some of the bills.
Sure. So thank you for having this conversation today. I'm State Representative Renitta Shannon for House District 84. And like you mentioned before, there are quite a few bills that are getting media attention where folks are saying call the governor and have him veto these bills. But I really want to bring to everybody's attention that there are some other quite harmful bills. And so while we're calling the governor about House Bill 838, there are other bills that have passed that you also need to be calling the governor to veto. So let's just start with 838 first, and since that one is most well known, and then we'll go over the other bills. So for those of you who don't know, HB 838 is basically a hate crimes protection bill for the police. So this basically is a bill that would add police as a protected class. There's a lot of problems with the bill. It basically talks about increased penalties for anybody who intimidates the police, which, what does that mean? I mean, if you just, you have something nasty to say to a police officer, or if you mean mug a police officer, is that how you would be charged with a hate crime against a police officer? Obviously we can just know that these types of bills are not the bills that we need, especially in this time that we're watching police officers commit hate crimes on Black and brown folks on video across the country. There's obviously no need for a hate crimes protection bill for police, in addition to the fact that the state of Georgia has some of the strongest protections for police officers. Lots of back to badge bills have been passed in recent years. And so police officers already have very strong protections in Georgia. Meanwhile, not one police accountability bill was passed, yet this bill was passed. And just so folks will know, the language that was taken out of House Bill 426, which was the original hate crimes bill, that language, when it got taken out of the hate crimes bill, it got put into House Bill 838. So that's what House Bill 838 is it's all of the objectionable language that was taken out of the original hate crimes bill having to do with making police a protected class. And they just hijacked another bill, which was HB 838, and put the language in that bill, and it passed both chambers.
Okay. And some of the other language that's in 838 is, of course, allowing for a cause of action civilly against somebody who files a false report against a police officer and violates their civil rights, which I thought was interesting in that no one has civil rights protections in this state, but now we're giving civil rights protection to law enforcement. So that was one part. And then, of course, the other part, giving them their Bill of Rights when most Georgia citizens just have the basic Bill of Rights. So just a lot wrong with that particular bill. And then carving out the carve out for a protected class simply for law enforcement when there's already enhancements for any type of attack on law enforcement in Title 16 already, which is the criminal code. So that was just some of the red flags that were raised to me about House Bill 838. But kind of tell us about the real crux of the hate crime bill that passed that everybody was excited about.
So the real crux of the hate crimes bill that passed that everybody was excited about was finally we do have protections for a variety of different classes within Georgia. So all of the federally protected groups, classes of folks like, not being able to commit hate crimes on people because of their race, because of their religion, because of their gender. All of that is now in state statute, but the new addition is that now LGBTQ folks, as well as other types of folks, will be included into the hate crimes legislation. So Georgia was one of only 5 states that did not have a hate crimes law. And the bill did take many different twists and turns within the last 2 weeks of session. But the final bill is one that is clean. And like I said, I think everybody is celebrating over that bill, but they're not realizing that HB 838 is out there. It exists. It did get passed. And we do need to see it vetoed by the governor.
Okay. There was also another kind of quasi black to blue bill that passed that dealt with increasing the fines or the cutouts for fines. Could you tell us a little bit about that bill?
Yes. Senate Bill 249 is one that you need to make it a priority to call the governor about this bill. This is a Senate bill that basically increases the fines that are given whenever you get like a citation, like a speeding ticket. So it increases, puts an additional fine on tickets and citations to basically put money into the police pension fund so that police jailers can be added into the pension fund. And this bill is really interesting because originally when this bill was passed, so we saw it in the House twice, actually. It came through the House. First time around, I voted against it. It was presented as a bill that, was simply to basically have Georgians pay additional fees on citations so that police jailers could be added into the pension fund. It went to the Senate, they added some more stuff, and then it came back to the House. And this time, in order to camouflage that this was a bill about adding in police jailers into the pension fund, they put in some other areas where they said, oh, well, some of the money will go to pretrial diversion resources. They started adding in other funds that the fees would go to cover up the fact that this bill from the beginning has been about putting, increasing the fines on Georgians to pay for police pensions. And again, to me, all of this is such a slap in the face. When we are having nationwide conversations about the lack of accountability for police officers, and now you want to additionally fine folks, especially right in the middle of COVID where people are really struggling financially. A lot of folks have lost their jobs, but even aside from COVID, to me, it's just the audacity for somebody to move a bill like this that would increase the fines on everyday Georgians to pay for a police jailer fund. Once again, we have had absolutely zero bills passed on police accountability. And this is one you definitely need to call the governor as well, because everybody's going to feel the brunt of it. I don't know anybody who hasn't gotten a speeding ticket in the last 5 years.
Yeah, yeah. I know right up until the bell, you guys were working on the budget. And so I want to know, the good and the bad of the budget. I know there's not going to be any furloughs, well, not furloughs, any layoffs, but I think there's some other things that we need to know about the budget. Could you tell us about the budget compromise and what it means to the people?
Sure. So there were some bright spots in session, specifically speaking about the budget. There was an effort that I had worked on since early 2019 to combat maternal mortality, which we know does affect Black women. Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die trying to carry a pregnancy, trying to give birth. And it's just due to complications in pregnancy. And so that is something where I submitted a bill in early 2019 to expand the amount of time that those who have just given birth can actually stay on state Medicaid. My bill said 12 months. We worked in coalition. There were a lot of representatives who worked on this with me. So Representative Park Cannon was a co-sponsor. Representative Hughley was a co-sponsor. Representative Abel Mabel, who is retiring, and we will miss her. She was a strong force on this bill. And so we worked really hard for the last year or so in coalition to force the state of Georgia to do something on this issue. And so I am happy to report, while I could not vote for the budget because of the other things that were in the budget that didn't make any sense, this was a bright spot. So now folks who have just given birth will get an additional 6 months on state Medicaid to combat maternal mortality. So it's a start. It's also $20 million going towards this effort. So that was one good thing that was in the budget. Some of the other things that did not allow me to vote for the budget were the fact that we're still giving so much money to private prisons. I think it was, the last number I checked was like 127 million to private prisons, but we had to cut $1 billion in public education. So, budgets are a document about morals and priorities. And so while there were some bright spots in the budget, ultimately it was not a budget I could support, but I am happy about the maternal mortality funding that went in it. And I do want to thank the chair of appropriations, Chairman England, for getting that done. Mm-hmm.
Yes. What are some other bills that have kind of flown under the radar that we're really not talking about that we need to talk about?
Sure. So SB 341, another Senate bill. This is a bill that was presented to us as something that would be able to help us out with what we've recently seen, meaning the protests that we've seen in the street about getting justice for Black and brown folks who have been abused or killed by police. This bill basically would allow counties and cities to deputize, to re-deputize and bring back into and create a supplemental police force for police officers who have retired. So what this means is your mayor or your county would be able to go and reactivate police officers that have retired and have them come back on as a whole supplemental police force in times of natural disaster or crisis. And so, like I said, the bill was presented as the sponsor of the bill literally said, this is to help us out with what we've seen recently. So what that means is, again, elected officials are not listening to the folks in the streets. They are not listening to this nationwide conversation that we talk about. We want police accountability. They are just finding ways to give police officers more money and more resources to evade accountability. So that is a bill that you should be asking the governor to veto, especially at this time when we're having conversations about defunding the police, which I support. Now is not the time to be giving extra money to create a supplemental police force.
And that would have directly affected the Ahmaud Arbery case because, you know, Gregory McMichael was a retired former investigator and former police officer with the Glenn County Police Department. So if this bill is signed, individuals like him potentially could come back on the force in times of emergency.
Yeah, and that's another thing is that the current police that we have across the country, they are used to, you know, they have to go through some training, the most up-to-date training, whatever, you know, whatever that police department has. These officers who have been in retirement, they have not been continuing on with training. So really, they just still have their post-certification, but they don't have any recent knowledge of any types of new training or really even the public scrutiny of what they're doing on a day-to-day basis because they've been out of commission for so long. So this is a horrible bill that I think will make it easier for mayors and for local governments to call in more police when they deem that there are too many people in the streets or that they don't like civil unrest in the streets.
Yeah. Let's talk about back on that Glenn County kind of area. You guys passed a bill to let the voters decide whether to defund or to destroy Glenn County Police Department. You tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So there were two bills that were passed that would put on referendum on this ballot to allow the folks of Glenn County to decide if they want to abolish your local police department. And what that means is their local police department would now fall under the county sheriff. And the reason why that is a good move and something I definitely support is because sheriffs are elected, while your police chiefs, who usually head up police departments, are not. They're usually given their positions by the mayors or CEOs in the case of DeKalb County. But sheriffs are elected. And so when you abolish your local police, like, for example, in this case, the Glenn County Police Department, and put everybody back under a sheriff, it's just a new step of accountability because that sheriff is elected. And so that person is going to have to make sure that they are hiring officers that are actually going to be respectful when they come in our communities particularly. So there are other counties, I'm trying to remember exactly who, I think Macon had already taken this step a couple of years ago. So this is not a completely new thing. There are other counties who have taken this step to abolish local police departments and just move it all under the sheriff who is elected.
Okay. So there are a few other bills you wanted to talk about that we really need to have on our radar. What are they?
Yeah, so there's just one final bill that I really want to encourage you to reach out to the governor and demand a veto, and that is Senate Bill 402. Are you starting to see a trend? Everything's coming from the Senate.
From the Senate. Seems like we got a problem in the Senate.
Yes, yes. So Senate Bill 402 is a bill that the Southern Center for Human Rights has actually done some work in trying to educate folks on why this bill is so harmful. We have been having a national conversation about ending cash bail because we know that that is a system that works to keep Black and brown folks in jail. So right in the middle of that conversation, now we see that the Senate sent over into the House where I serve a bill that would eliminate judicial discretion and would they would eliminate judicial discretion for unsecured bonds for all offenses. So basically this bill will force every person who is charged with a bail restricted offense. So if they are charged with committing an offense that has bail restrictions, to pay a secured bond before being released from jail.
So that would definitely be
doubling down on the
health-based detention.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
If you can afford to pay the secured bond, you wouldn't get out of jail.
That's
right?
correct. Yes.
Yeah.
That's correct. So yeah, you'd have to pay a secured bond.
So that bill passed the Senate and passed the House and is waiting on Governor Kemp's signature.
That's right. And so for anybody who cares about ending the cash bail system, with this new bill, it's really doubling down and taking us further into the cash bail system, because right now judges do have the discretion to not require a secured bond, but this bill would make it so they would have to. So these are the things that, you know, there's a lot to be calling the governor about right now. And let me give out his phone number right now so you can call him.
Please do.
Yes, 404-656-1776. So that's 404-656-1776. You need to call, tweet, email, Facebook, however you can, get in touch with the governor, because these bills are going to be signed likely within the next 2 weeks or so. And so we do have an opportunity to, as a last ditch effort, to get the governor to veto these bills. These bills are bad for criminal justice reform. Georgia was doing a great job of going, at least trying to take steps in the right direction to really put in practice some great criminal justice reform policies. And under the Kemp administration, we're just seeing those policies walk back, and we are seeing additional draconian policies being passed.
Yeah. And so for the people that are watching this, just know that you can get in touch with the governor. We need you to let him know we want him to veto these particular bills, and that you need to get in touch with your elected officials now that session is over, in preparation for next session, because this is when the real civic engagement happens. It's now that they're back in their districts and they're back down from the Gold Dome. We need to start pushing them to be more progressive. So Renitta, I just thank you for bringing this information to us on this platform, and we will continue to educate you as we move towards a more progressive Georgia. So thank you for following both of us on these platforms, and we will keep you informed as we keep going forward.
Thank you. Everybody call the governor.
Call the governor.